Well, excellent. Wonderful. Thanks for having Drew and I. We were fans of Artifact, and we're kind of honored that you wanted to talk about Defiance, which is Drew's incredible creation, which is over my shoulder right here. Um, I will tell you that there's few things in life that take my breath away, but I will tell you, going to Star Wars Celebration, walking around the corner and seeing what Drew had done, I was like, there wasn't even a question of whether I was going to buy a print or not. I just did it. It's done. It was the coolest thing. I loved Darth Vader. I loved Carrie Fisher. I loved Princess Leia, and I felt like the image, the creation, Drew, that you did was
Yeah.
it was breathtaking for me, and it obviously, and you can probably tell this story better than I can. It obviously enticed George Lucas himself because he bought the original. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, yeah, that's always a fun feather in my cap to be able to pull out that George Lucas owns a handful of my pieces at this point. So I like to say I've gotten more of his money than he's gotten of mine. So I win, right?
Yeah. Listen,
Definitely. I think that's a fair statement to make.
Yeah, but that's a piece that was years in development and really a labor of love, and to have people respond to it so much is really gratifying, right? It's really satisfying because you spend a lot of time in the studio wondering if it's going to be worth it, wondering if anyone's going to care, how big of a mistake did I make, and then you have people really respond and you're like, oh, okay, all right, I was right, it wasn't terrible.
I would say it's not a mistake, but an incredible piece of art. I would love to know what inspired you to go out and create Defiance.
Um, in a lot of it was just to prove that I could, right? I've been a freelance illustrator for more than a decade at that point, but a lot of the work I'd been doing for hobby games was very quick turnaround, and if you're doing the original painting, it's probably not bigger than 12 by 16 inches, something like that. And I'd started to branch out. I don't like to do the same thing over and over again, so I'd been feeling constrained. I wanted to try new things. I'd been taking some classes, learning more about making paintings versus making illustrations, right? Learning to handle the paint, handle the medium, and uh, immediately prior to doing this piece, I'd done a painting of a couple of stormtroopers that was almost life-sized, right? It was, I think, 24 by 45 inches, something like that, and that was a lot of fun. And then right on the heels of that, I had an opportunity to pitch something to Lucasfilm, and I said, "What if I do this? And what if I do it life-sized?" Like, yeah, go ahead, do it, prove it, essentially. And so we did. We went through with it,
yeah,
and it
it's
was.
it's amazing, and everybody from pizza delivery people to neighbors' kids come in and go, oh, and I think a lot of them, if they're Star Wars fans, and even if they're not, they have that. It takes your breath away. It is
Yeah.
certainly a conversation starter. Do you know? I know that George Lucas is rolling out a museum.
Mhm.
Have you heard if it will the original will appear there or not?
That's really the big question. I mean, I'm really hoping it will be. I can say technically the check came from the art museum, so it's in the collection of the museum. I have a friend who works at museums, and they just shook their head and said a piece that big is just easier to exhibit than it is to store. So uh, fingers crossed, right? And
Well,
I don't know that it'll be permanently on display, but hopefully it'll make an appearance a time or
I
two.
think if it appears there and after it opens, we should make a trip, the three of us,
Yeah.
and
Oh, I'd
see,
love
take
to.
a picture with it and do it. It's this the whole selfie thing. It'd be really cool. It just
Yeah.
everything about it would be for me. It again, it's just something I think I said this in the artifact post. It is a family heirloom. We'll pass it on. Like right now, my 9-year-old and 11-year-old look at it and they're like, whatever, dad's a dork. They're not nearly as into Star Wars as I am, but it's slowly coming along. But the day will come
Yeah.
where they're older and sadly I will be gone, where they're gonna be like, ah, that's pretty awesome, to receive that and have that, as an heirloom, as something that they can remember, their mom and dad by. And Drew, I want to thank you for
Oh,
doing it. We love it. I walk out of the house, I'll even be having a bad day, and I'll look at it and it'll be a little bit brighter. And
Thank
on the
you.
good days, it's you kind of twinkle toe out of the house because it's so cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And you bring up it being an heirloom, passing it down, and there are the artistic aspects of developing the piece, but there are also the very practical aspects of it, and particularly to the print run, because there's such a variety of printing techniques and substrates and materials that it was an entirely another process to get that made at a quality that would last. Right? We looked at the available printing technology and found the one that had the longest lasting inks, and found the canvas that would really last, and an excellent UV blocking varnish to apply, and included instructions for care and even further protection with the print, because we wanted this to be something that people could enjoy. I can't say forever, but for certainly years to come. It
Right.
was important, right? If you're responding to it, we don't want that to just fade away and crumble.
Well, good. Well, I had a great time, Heather, doing the artifact. Because it's so big, it's hard to find a really good quality picture. But when you get up close to it, you can see the brush strokes and the detail that Drew put into it. It's impressive. When you look at it from afar, it's like it's awesome. It's Darth Vader and Princess Leia. But when you get right up close to it, the labor of love that went into it. None of the pictures that I put in the artifact do it justice. You have to be around it, see it. You'll feel it. You will feel Darth Vader's hulking, massive presence, and he was a massive presence in the stories for Leia and Luke. And I thought that hulking presence was the way he looks on the picture said a lot. It's very he unfortunately was a hulking presence in their lives, and they had to take him down. Anyways, it's just a great piece.
Well, I'm really curious, Derek. What's been the most, I think, interesting reaction you've had when someone's walked in and they've seen that? Like, what's been any of your favorites you're willing to share?
Yeah, there's my son does karate, and there's a gentleman that eats up Star Wars, and he is just loves it, and he'll watch anything, any medium of Star Wars. He came in and just stopped in his tracks and just went cool, and he had shit-eating grin. And by the way, this gentleman looks exactly like Count Dooku. I mean, spitting image. And his response was great. You could see the joy on his face, and he just looked up at it and was like, cool. I mean, it's kind of like an experience of a museum. If you go to a museum and people, you go and see Starry Night at the MoMA, for example, and people just are like, oh my God, and because everybody knows it, right? In this case, everybody knows who Darth Vader and Leia are. But they seeing it in this medium as in a way that comes across like an old painting, like you would see in a museum, it floors people. It floored me. But his response was definitely the best one, because all he could say was cool.
It almost took his breath away. That's amazing.
Yep. And it is viewing it up on the wall, having it larger than life, or at least dwarfing you, being in its space, is very different than the context we mostly interact with art these days, right? On our screen or on our phone. To be able to have the space around you, share space with the image, is very different. And one of the things that makes it powerful.
You're gonna laugh. Actually, the house that we're in, we built it, or we bought it, because it has high ceilings, so it could hold the painting. And we're building a house now in Naples, Florida. And part of the design was to have high ceilings and a prime location for it, and
wow.
for Defiance. And so we, again, and hopefully it does last the test of time for us. But that is a consideration when we think about, where we decide to pull up is ceilings and space for it.
Oh, wow.
Drew, is that the first time you've heard someone say they're building a house around one of your artworks?
That is a new one for me. Yes. That's fantastic. Thank you. I'm honored.
Well, I love the look of Leia and that, like, her face just says it all. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's so timeless yet so relatable on so many levels, and it really is a stunning piece.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to jump in because I had an early version of it with me for Star Wars Celebration in 2015 in Anaheim, California, and there were rumors and scuttlebutt. I haven't done a lot of the shows, but people said don't break down really quickly because sometimes the stars come through the exhibit hall to see, what they missed because they're busy doing their thing. And so the show closed, and I was kind of dragging my feet and leaving my lights up and my painting, and Carrie Fisher came by. Uh, on a golf cart and things, and she stopped in and talked to me, and one of the first things she said was, looking at an earlier version of that piece, was she liked how defiant she looked, and so that's where the title comes from.
Oh,
Oh,
And so
wow.
that was the one time I actually got to talk with Carrie Fisher, and so that makes it, again, a special piece for me.
That's
that's
a really
awesome.
special tidbit. Derek, did you know that before?
No, no, I did.
Oh.
That's great.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I was calling it something much more elaborate that at its core, she just distilled it down to one word. Oh, defiance. Yes, that's exactly it. It's like you're a writer or something.
And you feel it. Like, when you look at that, you feel the defiance in her
Yeah,
face and her stance.
yeah. And it looks like a really simple piece, but getting all of the nuances correctly, the body language and the twist and his shoulders and the movement, that was so much work, right? I did sketches and thumbnails and sketches and thumbnails, had pages and pages just trying to develop and tell the story exactly the right way. And because it's such a simple piece, so few elements, everything, there was nowhere to hide. Like, everything had to be right. It was a tricky one.
Well, it's
What
very
was
striking.
Drew? What was the how did you decide to go with the type of painting that you use? Is there, because I mean you do a lot of different types of work. How did you decide on making it look like an old museum painting?
I guess that's just what I've been drawn to. My wife always used to joke that my favorite color was brown because I paint in it sort of a brown soup. But that traditional religious painting work, a look has just been what I've naturally been drawn to. At Star Wars Celebration in Germany, Suno Sanda, the illustrator from Japan, came over to talk to me, and he said, "You see a lot of people here doing illustration. What you do is religious art. Don't lose that." Uh,
Hmm.
and and that was a nice pat on the back, a nice reassurance, because it's easy to look around and see the stuff that everyone else is doing, and say, "Oh, I should do that. I can't do that. I should." Uh, but to
And for many, Drew, the force is some people's religion,
mm,
right? And
Mhm.
they live and breathe it, and they can't wait for the shows and the comics. And actually, I just picked up a bunch of comics today, the
yeah,
Darth Vader's Black and White and Red series,
mm,
and I got all the variants. And
nice.
for me, that was going to church. Uh, so it's interesting that's how you kind of allude to your work.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm even the illustration project I just finished up. It's a 40 by 54-inch painting that has a lot more to do with a sort of Caravaggio than the sort of movie inspiration. But I can't show it to you, not for another year or so.
That's okay. Well,
We'll
I'll
have to
be I'll
wait.
be waiting with bated breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both, Derek and Drew. This has been so enlightening on so many levels with the artwork and the inspiration and the story behind the title. It's really, truly an amazing print, Drew. And Derek, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's quite a piece. We're looking
Oh,
forward to highlighting it on May the 4th.
oh, thank you very much, Heather, and thank you, Derek.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Yep.
We